Hey guys, welcome to Connect Groups. Now this past Sunday we were in Luke chapter 12, verses 8 through 12, and we talked about the idea of acknowledging Christ before men. And some of the things that we covered really dealt with more the tension that we feel inside of ourselves whenever it comes to having opportunities to acknowledge Christ before men. Now, some of those tensions are really dealing with insecurities that we feel inside of ourselves, insecurities such as not knowing enough information, not knowing exactly what we should say, not feeling like we're good enough to share Christ and proclaim Christ, maybe that we would embarrass God. But then there's also the tension of there could be consequence, there could be a cost, there's risk to identifying ourselves with Christ at times. And it could cost us our jobs, it could cost us friendships, it could cost us relationships. And so what that does is that creates tension inside of us. What Jesus, I think, is really doing in this passage is he's given us a benchmark. Because to really live the way that Jesus is calling us to in this passage, what he's trying to set up is this idea that we are all in for him, that we trust him fully. Because if we're going to overcome our fears and our insecurities, and we're going to be willing to pay the cost of what it means to identify with Christ, if we're going to be willing to live that way with Christ, we are going to have to come to the place where we are all in for Christ. Now, the best way that I've ever heard this described, and I don't think I thought it up, but I heard it somewhere, but it's this idea of a stool, and me and someone sitting on a stool. Actually, right now, I'm sitting on a stool right here. You can't see it, but I am. I'm sitting on a stool. And what I'm doing is I am taking my feet up off the ground, and I've got my feet and my entire weight on this stool. What am I doing? I'm putting my trust in this stool. I'm putting my hope that it will hold me up. It will hold my weight and my frame and keep me in the air so that I don't fall on the ground and you guys don't all laugh at me. And so what I'm doing is putting my trust in this stool. Now, here's what I know what happens in our lives. Things come along. Things like trials, like hardships and job losses and loss of family members and just difficult circumstances come along in our lives. And it causes us to take our weight off of the stool, to put our foot down, and to steady ourselves with our own ability. We do this with our relationship with Jesus at times. These hard times come, and all of these things happen in our lives. And it unsteadies us. It causes us to falter and to wave back and forth. And so what do? We take our weight off of Jesus, and we put our foot back down and try to hold ourselves up. Or we'll try to help Jesus hold ourselves up. And what we're doing in that moment is we're actually taking our trust off of Jesus. We're taking the weight that we would put solely on him back onto ourselves and saying that we can handle to steady ourselves through these times, but Jesus can't. And so what we're doing when tension crops up inside of us and we have a hard time being obedient to God when it's going to cost us a lot, that's a situation where we get unsteady. And there's temptation to put our foot back down and to stand up on our own weight again. But to really overcome those fears, we're going to have to get to the place where we stay in that stool. So how do we do that? Well, I think first and foremost, we recognize where we are. It's okay to say you put your foot back down. It's okay to say that you failed. It's okay to say that this is where you are. You had a hard time trusting God in this moment. Now, this past week, I started working out again. I started seriously working out again. And I haven't seriously worked out for like 10 years. And so we were in the gym and we were lifting weights actually today. And we were doing a bench press. And I've always wanted to have a high bench press number. I don't know why. It's just I like the bench press. And so the temptation today was for me to go in and just throw a bunch of weight on there and just really show off and show how strong I was. But the reality is I haven't worked out in a long time. And so what I did was I started my weight low, and I just kind of gradually built up to the weight that I finished out at. And you know what? It wasn't as high as I wanted it to be. But that was okay. I know where I'm at now. I know where I have to grow. I know where I have to challenge myself and I know where what I have to do to get to the place where I want to be. And so oftentimes in our lives, I think we come to Christ and we walk in our relationship with Christ like we should be the superstars, bench pressing 400 pounds, that we should always get it right, that we should always even act like that we have it put together. But that's not what God's calling us to do. And I think when God gives us these opportunities to proclaim him, and we recognize the fact that we didn't fully trust him, that we failed him, that we disobeyed him, that we took our weight off the stool and put our foot back down. When we hit those moments, I think those are honestly maybe even sometimes gifts from God to allow us to see just right where we are. And when we recognize where we are, there's only growth to go from there when we bring us back to God. The reality is that God knows that we're not where we're going to finally be. God knows that as we struggle to be all in, He knows that we struggle with that, and he's going to be right there beside us. And when we bring our failures and our attempts to follow him and to acknowledge him and to stand and proclaim him before men, and we bring those attempts and we bring our failures and our successes, and we bring those things to God, he is only going to challenge us and grow us into what only he can even imagine that we could be. And so, if you're here today and you have struggled with this, I want to challenge you. Take heart. Know that God knows your struggle, and allow him to challenge you. Take those small steps of faith and allow him to challenge you to grow beyond where you are. Now, if a month from now I'm still bench pressing the same weight, something went wrong. And I think it's the same way in our relationship with Christ. This moment, this failure, the fact that we didn't come through and trust God, this is an opportunity for us to see where we are and to grow from here. So guys, keep allowing God to challenge you. Keep trusting him more and more. Keep allowing every situation in your lives to draw you closer to him, because that is the goal of everything in our lives anyhow. God doesn't need us to talk about him with other people, but what he does is invite us in and allows us to partake and share and proclaim that we are his, and to tell the people how great and wonderful it is to be loved by God. Guys, I love you, and I pray that you have a great week.